Hello my friends and welcome back. It's episode 3 of The Troop. Let's go ahead and play mission 2. Interestingly, my force is already selected here, which is nice. I guess we'll take mortars. I'm gonna go with a mostly infantry setup because that's what usually wins wars. And then if they deploy like 10 Stoogs, I'll just have to restart. Without any hint of what the enemy has got, it's very hard to make deployment choices here. I mean, the first mission said light resistance or light forces expected or something along those lines, and I was like, oh, okay. So I deployed a load of infantry and I got absolutely steamrollered by 6 tanks. So alright, we'll go with this.
Receiving.
Okay, so this map, it looks like all my forces are completely tight to the wall. And I have this huge open space here that makes me completely vulnerable. So if we were to put the camera like this, we can clearly see that if the enemy is on this wall, they have cover all the way to here. Cover all the way to here. Like this, there is like a literal line of cover over that whole area that they can use. So this is going to get very ugly very quickly. If I was on the other side of the map, I would be like, I'll put a couple of units here just to cover my flank. And I would just put most of my forces here, and I would just create a wall from here down like this. I would take these 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy. But of course, we don't have that luxury. There's a wall there. This wall actually hurts me. I guess.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Reporting. Reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Reporting. Yes, sir.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to
Receiving. Receiving. Yes, sir.
Take the...
Reporting. Receiving.
Try and take the house line.
Yes, sir.
So I'll take my whole team and try, because this is all open from what I can see. All the way up to here it's open. So if this infantry can just get this line of houses starting from here and going up like this, I take these 2 and 3 and my tanks lock off the open space while the infantry pushes forward. I can then decide what to do from there. I think my best bet is to just hold objectives and then murder the enemy till their morale fails. Well, this really depends on like where the enemy is.
Receiving.
Do they also just start right at the edge of the map like I do?
On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. 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 Reporting.
I'll leave that where it is.
Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir.
Okay, his site is currently...
On our way.
diabolical. That's much better.
Yes, sir. On the move. Yes, sir. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting.
That's fine.
Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On the move. Receiving. Receiving. On the move. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
It's a bit better.
Receiving. On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir.
We need to get
Yes,
across
sir.
this field as fast as possible.
Yes, sir. On our way.
Into the wheat.
Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir.
I suppose half
Receiving.
tracks here might be
On the
useful
move.
for getting your units into position faster.
Yes, sir. On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Alright, moving further forward does not
Yes, sir.
really get me any more area where I can hit.
Yes, sir. Receiving. On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. Reporting. Moving out. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On the move. Receiving. On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir.
That's it.
Receiving. On the move. Receiving. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way.
Whoa, how did a guy get there?
Receiving. Reporting.
How'd he get there so fast?
Receiving. Reporting.
5% chance to hit tile.
Reporting. Receiving.
Okay, so I guess the enemy does not spawn on their side of the
On
map.
the move. Receiving. On the move.
They just spawn wherever
Yes,
they
sir.
like.
Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving.
Does that mean there's no time limit?
On the move. Receiving.
And that take 5 objectives
On
just
the move.
goes on forever.
Yes, sir. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way.
I'd better move this way and actually get into this tree line and go this way and avoid this clear space.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Guess I might as well.
On our way. Yes, sir.
As soon as I fire, these units are revealed. So I probably shouldn't fire yet. I don't know if he sees any of my units, because all of my units have the hidden marker right now, apart from these 4. Huh. Do I have a shot on him? Oh, that's funny. They only see these guys here, so they're shooting at these guys. They don't see the ones that are actually
Yes, sir.
right on their... right on top of them.
Receiving. Reporting. Reporting. Yes, sir.
Okay, you can't see through
Yes,
that.
sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out.
I think I might just have to use a tank to
Yes, sir.
finish the job.
Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out.
Yeah, I doubt anyone can see him there.
Receiving. On the move. On the move.
There's a guy.
Receiving. Receiving.
In the building.
Receiving.
Minimal times 3,
Receiving.
then minimal times 4.
On the move.
Thrown weapon attacks
Receiving.
against buildings can only be initiated from an adjacent tile.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Receiving. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can't aim at that house either.
Yes, sir. Receiving. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Receiving. Receiving.
What are the odds that there are guys over the hedge?
On the move. Yes, sir. On the move.
Okay, it looks like this little section is
Yes,
actually
sir. On our way.
safe.
Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move.
I mean, he's right there. In an ideal world, I would get some tanks on this road
Yes,
and
sir.
just shoot him back.
On our way. On our way. Yes, sir. On the move. On the move.
So the idea would be, these guns are
Yes, sir.
pointing roughly in the right direction. They would drive out of the wheat and shoot in a stagger. So this one would drive out, shoot. This one would drive out, shoot, and so on.
Yes, sir. On the move.
A stagger cover shot. But how well it works in this game is
On the move.
open to debate.
Yes, sir.
This tank they know about, so I'll keep it back.
Reporting.
Yeah, he can't actually get across.
Moving out.
That unit in the building is going to hurt me plenty in a minute. Wow, he got the whole squad.
Receiving. Yes, sir. Reporting. Moving out.
Alright,
Receiving.
he's suppressed.
On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Reporting.
Boop.
Reporting. Yes, sir.
Oh, he has a shot. He actually has a shot from the wheat. And I don't think that guy realizes that he's targeted. Okay, so you need to aim about there.
Yes, sir.
And you need to aim about here.
On the move. Yes, sir. On the move. Yes, sir.
Alright, I'm not taking the shot because 16% is too low and I still have stealth mode, so
Receiving.
I'll save my precious stealth mode.
On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way.
I have to get into these trees as soon as possible.
Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. On our way.
I guess because he can see the road, he sees me moving through.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Yes, sir.
Alan!
On the move.
He might move because he's getting mortared. Nope. Alright, he's mine. Or he's hopefully mine. If this game makes sense, he's mine. Wow, they still got a kill despite being
Receiving.
almost suppressed down to nothing.
Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir.
51% chance to hit. I've been sat there for a full turn with him in my sights. Oh well, so be it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No. Yes.
On the move.
Okay. Turret should be on target. Chance to
Yes,
hit,
sir.
minimal.
Yes, sir.
Can hit
Yes, sir.
from there.
Yes, sir.
He no longer has line
Yes,
of
sir.
sight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's basically nowhere to hit that building. could hit the building from there.
Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. Receiving. Receiving. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. Receiving. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. 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 On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir.
Sniper team. You're almost at the tree line.
On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Reporting. Reporting.
Still only like 20% chance to hit. He's been sat there for like 4 turns.
Receiving.
Okay. Surely we can hit him this time.
Reporting.
35% chance to hit.
Reporting. Yes, sir.
Hit side turret deflected. 56%.
Enemy knocked out.
Got him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Receiving. On the move.
Alright, 2 can play it
Yes,
being in
sir.
the buildings.
Reporting.
Schmock.
Smoke grenades away. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Reporting. Reporting. Receiving.
Wish I could get a shot on that house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I can from there.
Yes, sir. On our way.
Tactical advance to bocage, as the French would say. Simpson,
Yes, sir.
eh?
On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move.
Hate the trees, lovely.
Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir.
Alright.
Reporting.
Just suppress
Receiving.
them.
On the move. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Receiving. Reporting.
Okay. He's running. He's giving up ground. And so is the sniper.
Receiving.
That's fine. That's in fact very helpful for me.
On the move. Receiving. On the move. Reporting. Reporting. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's cover, that's cover, that's not cover.
On our way. Reporting. Moving out.
He's given up the house, or at least part of it.
Receiving.
If I just move in,
Yes, sir.
he's smoked.
Receiving.
Okay, he still counts as being in the house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, there's no splash. I mean, a tank, you just pump HE shells into the building. The guys inside would be turned into freaking pancake.
Yes, sir.
But I can't do that. White phosphorus. That would be spicy in the building and a war crime.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's just no way to engage with that spot from where I am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir.
They don't appear to have any
On our way.
artillery, because you'd think
Yes,
we would have
sir.
seen it by now.
On our way. Reporting. Moving out.
If they had some.
Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On the move. Receiving. On the move.
Okay, I don't know if we're on a timer or not. Doesn't say anything about a timer.
Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On the move.
I'll move a few
Yes,
tanks
sir.
forward.
On the move. Yes, sir. On our way.
That's an anti-tank gun.
Receiving. On the move.
Okay. If I get the
Reporting.
sniper, that's good.
Yes, sir.
Please tell me you got a shot on that guy. Nope.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to be humping the guy to actually get a hit on him. Aha. There?
Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On the move. Yes, sir. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way.
You know what? I'm going to come around behind those.
Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir.
No one can see
Yes, sir.
the other side of this hedgerow.
On the move. Yes, sir. our way. Reporting. Yes, sir. Reporting. 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 Moving out. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move.
Catch.
Receiving. Yes, sir.
Got enough action points to get in there.
Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Reporting. Moving out.
I'm
Receiving.
vaulting the wall right now.
On the move. Reporting. Reporting.
We shall make this tile uncomfortable.
Receiving. Yes, sir. Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. Receiving.
Wasn't this an HMG crew? I'm pretty sure. Oh, he's gonna get some. Give me some time to get in position.
Receiving.
Alright, good.
Yes, sir.
It's this tile. Right there.
Yes, sir.
If I drive there like that, it points me in the right direction, but it also reveals me, which is very bad.
On our way. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Apparently shooting in the house doesn't make sense.
Receiving.
Got him.
Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir.
Alright, the house is mine. Oh, it's a hit. 2 kills.
Reporting.
I hope I don't have to take 5 objectives within 12 turns. That would be very sad.
Yes, sir.
Because it certainly didn't mention that. Okay, that tank has got its
Yes, sir.
side exposed.
Yes, sir.
Oh, the line of sight tool is such a nightmare to use.
Yes, sir.
If you click on a unit card, it takes you out of the line of sight tool. Or if you even just click near one. I need to
Yes, sir.
actually, like, drive into their faces
On the move. Yes, sir.
to get them. Excuse
On
me.
our way. On our way. Yes, sir. On the move. Receiving. Yes, sir. On our way. Yes, sir. On the move. Receiving. On the move.
Okay. So, I mean, in an ideal world, the tank push reaches this farm path here and then drives this way and comes behind these two and just kills them dead. But who knows what's here. So this is not
Receiving.
without risk. Or if he carries on driving forward, I might, if he drives to about here, I might be able to just snipe him directly
Reporting. Receiving.
without
On the move. Reporting. Moving out.
doing any
Receiving.
risky pushing.
On the move. Receiving. Yes, sir.
Wow, that's some amazing no chance to hit.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. On our way.
This objective I should be able to take pretty quickly. In fact, if they don't stop the infantry swarm will be able to get the anti-tank gun from the safety of the house. Or should be able to.
Yes, sir. Receiving. Receiving.
They're on the run. Apparently they don't appreciate being mortared. Oh my god, if I could hit that, it would be amazing. Please tell me one of these tanks has got a shot.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you're pointed right at it. I don't even think those trees are actually in the way.
Yes, sir.
This tool. He's not going to stick around.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Yes, sir. On our way.
I think I'm going to have
Yes,
to just
sir.
stick with the plan. Oh, please tell me that hedgerow is not
Yes, sir.
so thick that they can't just drive over it. No, they can.
Yes, sir.
Ah, I have this occupied. That means there's nothing here.
On our way. Yes, sir. On the move. Yes, sir.
This tank is spotted.
On the move. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Receiving. On the move. Reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. On our way. Receiving. On the move. Receiving. On the
Go
move.
back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On our way. Reporting. Moving out. Receiving. Reporting. Yes, sir.
That's the spot.
Yes, sir. On our way.
23%. Not a great chance to hit.
Reporting.
Yet. Oh, it would have been amazing if it went in.
Reporting. 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 Moving out. Reporting. Receiving. On the move.
Get over that road.
Receiving. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, if he sits still, I should be able to just shoot him next turn, but... You know, once again, we're very heavy on the RNG in this, so... Who knows? I do have 2 points and I've contested 1, so they can't take the win 5 objectives thing if there is a timer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If there's a timer, Wow, that was a... Did he have more action points or something? That's kind of crazy. Remaining turns, 17. So I guess I gotta get 5 points in 17 turns. That's a lot of turns, actually.
Yes, sir.
Is that guy literally...
Yes, sir.
Do I literally have a shot on him? I totally do. He just parked right in front of me with a 3-point turn. I'll be mega annoyed.
Yes, sir.
If this doesn't land. %60%. There's a 60% chance that he explodes, or maybe less because there's random on the damage table. And then what potentially happens is he shoots back and I die. And this is the perfect moment to leave the game, is like on this decisive moment, because I mean look at how decisive it will be. He was totally in the wrong position. He was facing the wrong way completely. He was facing this way. So he managed to do a massive loop around and aim in one turn. And he'll undoubtedly have no aim penalty next turn. He'll be able to just shoot for 100% chance to hit. So let's see how it turns out. But I may be about to scream or not. We'll see. But that is it for now. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.